Today, President Trump addressed an audience of law enforcement officers about his administration's efforts to combat the violent street gang MS-13. He delivered the remarks in Long Island, New York, where the transnational gang has a strong foothold.
We're going to destroy the vile criminal cartel MS-13 and many other gangs. But MS-13 is particularly violent. They don't like shooting people because it's too quick. It's too fast. They kidnap, they extort, they rape, and they rob. They prey on children. They shouldn't be here. I have a simple message today for every gang member and criminal alien that are threatening so violently our people. We will find you, we will arrest you, we will jail you, and we will deport you.
Earlier tonight, Martha McCallum on The Story interviewed Evelyn Rodriguez, who was the mother of a 16-year-old Kayla Cuevas, who was killed by MS-13. And she and the father were willing to come in and share part of their story. And I think that this is important because it gives voice to what President Trump is talking about. Let's take a listen.
I knew they existed. I knew they were within the school. I just didn't know how bad it was. Me and my daughter had an open relationship. She told me everything. When there was a problem, I immediately contacted the school, had a meeting with that. Again, they will take care of it, and it wasn't.
And so then you have a 16-year-old girl and many, many others all across the country, in particular Long Island, Jesse. You're probably a little bit more familiar with this than any of us. This is a gang that it's not just a lark that the president's on. Like, this is like very serious stuff, and it's spreading.
It's a vicious gang. He's going after the bad hombres first, like he said he would. ICE has actually arrested over 3,000 gang members just in 6 months alone. That's almost as much as President Obama arrested in a whole year under his ICE administration. What they do is they go into these communities, a lot of times Hispanic communities, and they threaten teen Hispanics that don't speak a lot of English into coming into the gangs. They traffic in narcotics. They traffic in humans. They use machetes. Yep. They're very violent, and they're very gory, and that's what's drawing a lot of national media attention here. I think destroying MS-13 is pro-Hispanic because a lot of the victims are Hispanic. Yeah. So when the president comes out and makes a grand statement like this, and it forces Democrats to say, you know what, we're going to vote for more resources for ICE. We're going to vote for more immigration judges. We're going to vote for more ICE agents, because if we don't, there's going to be mayhem. We do a story on Water's World on Saturday night at 8 o'clock this week where there's a guy who was a Mexican national. He was deported 20 times.
Oh, my gosh.
And now he's back in Portland, which is a sanctuary city, and now he's charged with raping 2 women at knife point. But the local sheriff won't even say anything to ICE because they're a sanctuary city. Kate's Law would have protected these 2 rape victims. The Wall would have protected these 2 rape victims. So it's when you highlight victims like this, like what we just saw on Martha's show, it really resonates with the rest of the country to say there are victims, this is real, and we need to get tough.
Lisa, you want to say something?
Well, and what's interesting, too, is President Trump is actually doing what the Democratic Party does really well, which is giving a personal voice to issues. Yep. And he's lent a voice to victims of illegal immigrants, which is something that we never saw under President Obama. And look, President Trump said that he was going to crack down on illegal immigration, and he absolutely has done that. He did. His administration ran a 6-week operation. 1,300 gang members were detained, which is the most we have ever seen in history. And look, I grew up around the Northern Virginia area, and there's a big problem with MS-13 in that area. If you look at Montgomery County, Maryland, they've seen 16 gang-related homicides from MS-13 in just a 2-year period alone. So this is a big problem for people in the country. I'm certainly glad to see him cracking down on it.
So he said, Juan, that he would be the law and order president. And I think one of the other things he did today was basically tried to give the police there his sort of blessing to say, like, go after them and be tough. And some Democrats took offense to that when he said that he was okay with that.
Well, I mean, basically what he says is get rough with suspects. I don't know why the president of the United States would be saying that to the police. I mean, given we have a reality of a real problem on the streets between people and police getting a little bit out of hand, and I don't think it helps. You know, but I wanted to talk about what Jesse was saying. Jesse was suggesting, well, wait a second, the Latino community, in fact, feels threatened by MS-13, which is a fact, as you just heard from Lisa. Lisa and I both live in the D.C. area. We know this is a reality. But the problem, Jesse, is there's greater fear of mass deportation and families being broken apart and people picked up who are not involved in any crime, but just being swept up by this kind of anti-immigrant rhetoric that's coming from President Trump. And you see this, you know, it's like he's promoting fear of all illegal immigrants in order to justify it and to play to the political crowd that wants to blame illegal immigrants for every sin in the country. And one last point. I thought it was stunning today that you have Attorney General Sessions in El Salvador fighting MS-13, and he doesn't get one shout out, not one mention from the president when he's talking about fighting MS-13. Talk about a political signal.
That might have been an oversight, but you're right. That is obviously something that should have been mentioned. Greg, do you think that what President Trump is trying to do is just fulfill a campaign promise that says, I'm going to try to return this order, and MS-13 is his main target?
I want to respond to what Juan said. Okay. This is a perfect example of the Trump presidency in this media atmosphere in a nutshell. In 6 weeks, they netted 14 illegals. Over 1,000 were gang members. That's a big deal. But what does Juan do? He focuses on the 2 lines about the police, or he talks about the fact that he didn't mention Sessions. So the media attention is always about the periphery issues. But there's a bigger issue, and I've always said this before with Donald Trump. The bigger issue obliterates the little issues. You don't have to like him. You don't have to like the fact that he forgets about things, or the fact that he doesn't see a child and doesn't shake the hand, and you think that's awful. You come up with all this stupid stuff when, in fact, if you look at the bigger issue matters. And this is my advice for Democrats. Listen, the fact is he took law enforcement, terror, border, wrapped it into this cocoon of national security, and he beat the pants off you because of this very issue. And what he did with law enforcement is he made it okay to appreciate law enforcement again. Most of America appreciated it from the first place. But now you can do it openly because we had a media for the past 6 years that painted the law enforcement as the problem. Police brutality was exaggerated. I believe it's exaggerated, and it's time. And now this pendulum is swinging back to the point where we can say we're proud of what you do.
Let me tell you, if you're black or brown in America, police brutality.
I saw that response coming.
And you know what else?
I look at statistics.
You know what else? When I like this. In fact, you sent me something that I was so impressed with, which was this podcast, and they had 2 people, a Trump supporter and a Trump opponent.
Sam Harris,
right.
Scott Adams.
And I was so taken because what you saw, the argument for Scott Adams was Trump manages to be persuasive by rolling things in sort of beyond the factual basis. But here, Greg, in this case, there is no question he's playing a fear card that appeals to people emotionally. You say, those illegal immigrants.
No. Okay.
I fear MS-13 too, Juan. And I think people that are getting their heads chopped off with machetes, we fear those guys also.
And when 75% of the illegal immigrants that they have detained have been convicted criminals of things like assault, homicide, rape, drug-related crimes.
But that's fine.
I think your argument falls a little flat.
But the reality is you have more to fear from people who are American citizens in terms of being killed.
That's
or
fine. But you can hold 2 competing thoughts. You can dislike American criminals and dislike illegal immigrant criminals. What you're doing wrong, Juan, is you're conflating a dislike for illegal immigrants with immigrants. Trump isn't anti-immigrant. He's anti-illegal immigrant.
No.
There's a difference.
No, there is a difference, but not with Trump, because actually he's trying to cut back on all kinds of immigration, although he broke his own word the other day and issued more visas for seasonal workers.
You should
there you go.
There you go. All right. The GOP's skinny Obamacare repeal effort failed overnight after John McCain stunned his party with a deciding no vote. So what now? We'll tell you next.